Hello and welcome back to video classes by Konnur English Medium School. We were discussing what is moral action, an essay by M.K. Gandhi. We'll continue from where we left off. We stopped at paragraph number 3, in the middle somewhere there. We were saying that the action has to have good intention behind it to become a moral act. So Gandhi gave the example of two people feeding a poor person but with two different intentions, and how the one that had the selfish interest behind it could not be called the moral act because of that selfish interest behind it, while the other person fed the poor person because he felt pity for him, felt sorry for him. So now we talk about Emperor Alexander, who is called the Great. Wherever he went in the course of his conquests, he took the Greek language and Greek culture, arts and manners, and today we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization. Gandhi is mentioning the great famous Emperor Alexander, who is called the Great. You see, the word great is used after the name, like Alexander the Great. So why that epithet follows him, why that word great follows him, is because he was so famous for his conquests. Wherever he went, he won his battles and he expanded his kingdom, his Greek empire. He took the Greek language and Greek culture, arts and manners, and today we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization. But wherever Emperor Alexander went, with him he took Greek language, Greek culture, Greek arts and Greek manners. So he introduced these to the local people in other countries. So today we enjoy Greek civilization, the benefits of Greek civilization, like democracy for example. But the intention of Alexander behind all this was only conquest and not renown. But was it his intention? Was it Alexander's intention to introduce the fine Greek culture, mannerisms, art and knowledge to the countries that he was conquering, to those people who he had won over in battles? Was it his intention? No. His intention was only that of a renown. He just wanted to be famous as the great emperor by winning the battles everywhere. But his intention was only that. So, who can therefore say that his actions were moral? It was all right that he was termed great, but moral he cannot be called. So, it's okay to call him the great because yes, he was a great ruler, he was a great fighter, he was a great king, all that. But you cannot say that his actions were moral, even though we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization today. So these reflections, that is these thoughts, prove that it is not enough for a moral act to have been done with a good intention, but it should also have been done without compulsion. Now another angle for a moral act to be called a moral act, another attribute for it would be that the act should have been done without any compulsion. There is no morality whatever in my act if I rise early out of the fear that if I am late for my office, I may lose my situation. So, if as a grown man I go to my work or office early on time, that's a good thing, that's a good act that I am performing. However, if I am doing it out of compulsion, if I am doing it fearing that I will lose my position, I will lose my promotion or increment if I don't go on time, that is a good act but not a moral act, because there is a kind of compulsion behind that act. But plain, simple living would be moral. Okay, so similarly, there is no morality in my living a simple and unpretentious life if I have not the means to live otherwise. Similarly, if I choose to live a very simple life, not a life of luxury and pleasure, if I want to be, if I want to live a very simple life, well, why do I want to live a simple life? Is that because I do not have a choice? But is that because I have a choice to live a luxurious life, but I have made a decision to live it as simple as possible? that needs to be considered. Plain simple living would be moral if, though wealthy, I think of all the want and misery in the world about me and feel that I ought to live a plain simple life and not the one of ease and luxury. Now imagine I have all the wealth with me, but still I want to live a simple life, because I see so many people around me in the society suffering, people who are homeless, people who cannot fend for themselves, people who cannot get good treatments in hospitals because they don't have money for it, people who cannot send their children to school because they don't have money. So if I see all the misery around me, if I consider that and I feel sorry for them, then I think, okay, why should I live a life of comfort and ease and luxury when so many thousands of people around me are suffering, are living a miserable life? And I think, okay, I will live a simple life. Even though I have all the wealth, even though I have all the options to live a luxurious life, I don't want that kind of life. I want to live a simple life. Then my decision of living a simple life can be called moral, because I had a choice to live a luxurious life. I did not choose that, make that option. So that is how Gandhi takes us into the psychological aspects of seemingly good things that we do every day. Likewise, it is only selfish and not moral of an emperor to sympathize with his employees or to pay them higher wages lest they leave him. Well, same thing can be said about an employer, a person who gives jobs in his company or his institution, and he decides to give them better salaries or better wages or promotions and increments, thinking that if he doesn't do that, they might go to somebody else, they might join some other institution. If he does that, if he does his action with those thoughts, then even if he is helping his employees by giving them raises and increments and better salaries, his action cannot be called moral, because he is doing it out of compulsion, because he does not want to lose the good employees. Similarly, says Gandhi, so those two examples are linked with each other. It would be moral if the employer wished well of them and treated them kindly, realizing how he owed his prosperity to them. But the same act of an employer giving good salaries or better wages to his employees, thinking that it's because of them that he has achieved the prosperity, the growth his institution or company has achieved is because of the hard work of the employees, then he decides to share the benefit, share the profit that he had earned to a greater extent with them, then that act would be called a moral act. So this means that for an act to be moral, it has to be free from fear and compulsion. Not only do we have to perform our acts with our own will and good intention, but the acts should also be performed without any fear and compulsion. When the peasants rose in revolt and with bloodshot eyes went to King Richard II of England, demanding their rights, he granted them their rights under his own seal and signatures. Well, one such incident Gandhi picks up from history, where during the rule of King Richard II in England, all the farmers, all the peasants, they went on a mutiny. They rebelled against the king. They went to his palace and demanded their rights, peasants' rights, farmers' rights. And King Richard II said, "All right, you want your rights back? I will give you your rights back." And then under his own seal and insignia, he wrote entitlement letters to the farmers, saying that you now have the rights over your land, the land that you till, the land that you cultivate. So that was a good thing that King Richard II did. But was it a moral act? But when the danger was over, he forced them to surrender the letters. It would be a mistake for anyone to say that King Richard's first act was moral and the second was immoral, for his first act was done only out of fear and had not an iota of morality about it. Well, once the danger was over, once the mutiny was over, when the farmers all went back home and forgot about all the mutiny that they had developed into a big storm, actually they had surrounded King Richard's palaces. They had laid a siege to the palace. So King Richard thought, If I say no to these farmers now, then I am in serious danger, I am in serious trouble. So let it first calm down, thinking that he had given them back their rights. But his intention was not really to be nice to them. Once the mutiny was over, he sent soldiers to each farmer's house and then forcefully took back those letters from the farmers. So while the second act can be called immoral, you cannot call the first act moral either, because that was done out of fear and compulsion. So for his first act was done only out of fear and had not an iota of morality about it. Just as a moral action should be free from fear and compulsion, so should there be no self-interest behind it. This is not to say that actions prompted by self-interest are all worthless, but only that to call them moral would detract them from dignity of the moral idea. That honesty cannot long endure, which is practiced in the belief that it is the best policy. As Shakespeare says, love born out of the profit motive is no love. So, in our action, not just there should not be fear or compulsion, but the action should not have any selfish interest behind it. If your act, no matter how good it is, it has selfish interest behind it or self-interest behind it, it cannot be called a moral act. So that takes away the dignity of moral act, says Gandhi. Now, if you practice honesty as a best policy because it protects your self-interest, then you're not really honest. You're practicing honesty only because you're afraid that it might cause you some trouble if you don't be honest. But then, if you're being honest just out of fear, you're not being honest because you value honesty. Only if you value honesty and you practice honesty, you're always honest, then you can say that what you're doing is moral. Like Shakespeare says, love born out of profit motive is no love. So if you befriend somebody, if you like somebody, and if you are nice to somebody just because you are expecting something in return from them, then your friendship has no real value. So these are some really very interesting insights that Gandhi brings up about the common acts, common things that we do every day, and we feel they are good things to do. So let's see what are the ideas Gandhi has about an act being a moral act. Just as an action prompted by the motive of material gain here on earth is non-moral, so also one other done for considerations of comfort and personal happiness in another world is non-moral. Now we want so many things here when we are living here, when we are still alive, from our birth till our death. Our wishes, our wants never end. And we also sometimes think about what happens after death. People tell us, you do good things, you go to heaven, you do bad things, you go to hell. So, and nobody wants to go to hell. See, we are taking care of that part as well. We want to be nice, we want to be doing good things because we don't want to go to hell after our death. So even there we have a self-interest. So when we go to God and pray to God, are we really praying to God out of devotion, or are we praying to God because we want something back from the God? Is it like a contract with the God where we say, well, I will do these things for you and you help me achieve this or gain this in my life? Well, are we actually having a mutual contract with God? So that is what Gandhi is raising here as a question. That action is moral which is done only for the sake of doing good. A great Christian, Saint Francis Xavier, passionately prayed that his mind might always remain pure. Many great people, saints, yes, ascetics, gurus, sages, yes, rishis, we talk about them. So they've all taught the path of devotion. Devotion does not have any expectation. You do devotion to God because that is what you are supposed to do. That is your dharma. That is your duty. But if you are expecting something back because you're offering flowers to God or you're taking fruits to God, then that is not really devotion. For him, devotion to God was not for enjoying a higher seed after death. He prayed because it was a man's duty to pray. So don't pray to God for a better prospect after death, saying that I want to go to heaven after death and I'll be nice to you, I will do my devotion and you help me secure a seat in the heaven. Well, that sounds a stupid, utter stupid idea, but we forget that that's what it is. So the great Saint Teresa once wished to have a torch in her right hand and a vessel of water in her left, so that with the one she might burn the glories of heaven and with the other extinguish the fires of hell. So Saint Teresa also said something similar. She said, give me a bowl, give me a vessel of water in one hand and give me a torch in the other. With the torch I will burn the glories of heaven, and with the water I will extinguish the fires of hell. So that means my devotion for God is not concerned with the temptations of heaven or the fears of hell. So even devotion can have selfish interest behind it, and if it has that selfish interest behind it, then it is not pure devotion. And going to temples or places of worship and everything we do as part of that worship might not become a moral act. That is the gist of that discussion there. We will continue reading this essay in the next class.